I wonder which one of them I'm gonna have suck me off first, the merc or our little veteran actress. Suppose I'll try the merc first and see if she's as good as her output. Why not both? You know, that reminds me. Did you ever see that BD called Tummy Sticks? The one with the two bitches who were tied up in a 69 and strung upside down while those trannies pissed all over them? What? You still watch fucking porn? And the vanilla shit too, no less. Fucking jackass. Fuck you. Like you don't watch every fucking copy of everything we scroll. No shit I do. But that's not fucking porn. That shit's real. And it ain't vanilla. Big fucking difference, you dumbass. I remained motionless as the argument carried on. Bishop was still standing next to me while the other members of the ring busied themselves unpacking boxes that were filled with a variety of prepackaged foods and water, settling themselves in for the long haul apparently. That didn't bode well for us. V's eyes flashed between me and Bishop. Her skin had turned pale with fear, and a thin sheen of sweat had formed on her brow as he turned and stepped behind me. His hot breath brushed against the hairs on the back of my neck. "Just look at her," he whispered into my ear. "With a set of tits like those, it's no wonder you wanted to keep her all to yourself. Can't say I fucking blame you either. But you're gonna share her with us now, aren't you? Gonna let us titty fuck her till she's raw, then lube us back up with your mouth, ain't ya?" I remained as calm as I could. My time with Bishop had allowed me to grow wise to his act. He was a talker. I'd met plenty of people like him over the years, though none of them were anywhere close to as disturbed as he was. But I was also quite sure he'd never met someone as manipulative as I was. Every second I managed to keep him talking was one more river would have to find us. Hopefully. "Get that thing out of her mouth," I said meekly before adding, "please." I could almost feel the goosebumps of excitement on his skin. "Look at you asking me all nicely and shit. Don't worry, we're gonna get that gag out of her mouth real soon so we can put it to good use, though I'm not sure now's the right time. She was making quite a bit of noise earlier when she woke up, and she still seems a little worked up. Rather odd, actually, considering how quiet you were when you woke up from the same hack we hit her with. I guess she's more of a screamer than you are, huh?" "Hey boss," a voice called out behind me. "Where do you want all of this?" Bishop huffed. "You asshats can't do jack shit without me, can you?" I scanned our surroundings, barely moving my head from one side to the other as I searched for anything that might help us, but unless I planned to assault them with a torn sheet of cardboard or... My eyes widened. The pistol had been left unattended on a small workbench about 10 yards away. It was small and probably wouldn't even have enough bullets to put all of them down even if V was the shooter, but it was sitting right there. All I had to do was find a way to get to it. But then what? V was still cuffed to the chair, and if things devolved into a firefight, she would be helpless. I wasn't a terrible shot, but I certainly wasn't anywhere close to as practiced as V. Maybe I could pick off a couple of them and try to hide behind one of the crates, but I was likely to end up bleeding out from the half dozen or so holes they'd fill my chest with before I got there. A heavy hand gripped my shoulder from behind, snapping me out of my thoughts. The other hand extended out in front of me, holding a familiar-looking shard in his hand. "I'm sure you know what this is," Bishop said. "Admittedly, these aren't as sophisticated as the ones you came up with, but we'll make do." Shit. If he tried to slot the shard into my port, then he would stumble across the chip. And if that happened... I had to think fast. Just as I sensed his hand moving toward the side of my head, I spun on my heels to face him. "Can you get her some water first, please?" I pleaded, digging deep down inside of myself to keep my lips from curling in disgust as I added in something I hoped would spark his interest. You said you wanted us wet, right?" Bishop threw his head back and bellowed with laughter. "You hear that, fellas? She wants us to get her wet." As the rest of them burst out into laughter, I stole a brief glance at V and tried to reassure her, but her eyes were filled with horror and focused on Bishop as he pocketed the shard and swiped a bottle of water out of one of his friend's hands. She jerked her head away when he approached, stopping with his crotch just inches away from her face. "What do you think, sweetie?" Bishop asked, twisting the cap off the bottle. "Should I get you nice and wet for us?" I bit my tongue. Hard. The copper taste of blood filled my mouth as I struggled to keep myself from smashing my fist against the side of Bishop's head.
Come on, River. Where the fuck are you?
Your little star output here is already soaked. What, you don't believe me? Here, I'll prove it to you. Bishop gestured for me to approach. Remembering where the pistol was, I did as he ordered and stopped next to V. He grabbed my arm and wrenched my hand toward her face. Smell that? He asked, smearing my still sticky fingers along V's nose. I know, you know, what that is. I didn't even have to touch her. She knows her ass belongs to me, just like yours does now. Throwing my hand aside, Bishop raised the bottle over her head and tipped it over. V twisted and sputtered as water spilled over her face, cutting off her air supply. Stop! I'd managed to stay in control up until now, but I couldn't hold out like this much longer. He was relishing the torture, and what was worse was that V wasn't even his intended victim. I was the target of his wrath, and he was just getting started with me. Finally, the bottle emptied, and Bishop tossed it aside. V's hair was matted to the side of her head and drops of water spilled onto her chest as she gasped for breath. There you go, he said, turning to face me. Nice and wet. His eyes flickered past me. Are you dumbasses all finished up yet? You know my patience has limits. The others laughed at him despite the ominous tone of his voice. I shivered as footsteps approached from behind me. Even with my back to them, I could feel those creeps undressing us, with their eyes. Good, Bishop smiled. Boys, you know the drill. I cried out as my head was jerked back and the business end of a knife was pressed against my throat. The chip in my head was screaming for me to take action as the tip of the blade poked my skin. V was groaning and thrashing about in protest, but the cuffs kept her pinned to the chair. Bishop turned his attention toward V. You can feel it now, can't you? That this is going to happen, and the two of you aren't getting out of this. But as my little bitch here already knows, we can't very well keep you like this if we're going to get any use out of you. Now, here's what's going to happen. He leaned close, brushing his lips against her cheek. His voice was barely above a whisper. I'm going to take this gag out of your mouth, and you're not going to make a single sound, or my choom here is going to give your output a smile that'll never come off. Then, I'm going to take these cuffs off you. The angle here won't quite work for me, and you're going to want to be on your knees when you suck my cock. But don't worry, while she needed a little encouragement at first, this little slut was eventually able to fit me all the way down her throat. She looked incredible with my balls on her chin. I'm sure you will too. Oh, and one other thing. You're gonna look at her the whole fucking time. If I see you close your eyes or look away even once, I'm gonna cut her fucking tits off and you can suck on those instead.
Where the fuck are you, River?
My heart was threatening to explode from my chest as I glanced at the gun on the table. I could probably fight my way to it and maybe get off a couple of shots before they'd be all over me. There were just too many of them, and they were too close. Unless 2 shots were all it would take. The second one would be easy. It was the first that worried me. I'd have to spin on a dime as soon as I got my hands on the gun, and I couldn't afford to miss. If the shot went wide by so much as an inch, then I would certainly panic and miss any other rounds I might get off. And if I only grazed her skull, or worse, struck her, but didn't kill her, was that better than what was about to happen to us? To die by our own hands? Sure, we would be together for a while. Bishop had mentioned months, but we'd only be husks of our former selves. Even if they were to drug us like they'd done before. My eyes widened. It was a gonk idea, one which was likely to get us both killed. But with no time left to think, it was the best chance we would have. The chip hidden in my head was the only card I had left to play. If I turned it on, I would certainly catch them off guard, but the program could only control what it had available to work with. I had thinned considerably over the last several weeks, and I was probably the weakest person in the room when it came to physical strength. V, on the other hand, she'd always been faster and stronger, and she was about to be uncuffed. If I could somehow transfer the chip into her head, we might have a better shot. But that would mean distracting them somehow so I could get close to her. And I knew exactly how to do that. I only needed to sell it to Bishop, who was busy pulling the gag out of V's mouth. She flexed her jaw and looked up at him, brow furrowed and jaw set. But the defiance in her eyes quickly faded when she looked back at me. Her chin began trembling as Bishop unlocked the cuffs that bound her wrists and ankles. Her cheeks turned red, and my heart nearly broke as her eyes filled with something I'd never thought I would see in them. Acceptance. "Can you give us some ice?" I blurted out. Bishop turned to me, startled. "What?" The knife pressing against my skin faltered. I would only get one shot at this, but I had a lifetime of experience to draw upon. I put on the best puppy dog eyes I'd ever worn and cautiously inched forward. The knife pulled away completely as I stuck my chest out and sauntered closer, offering him a perfect view of my hardened nipples poking through my shirt. He grew curious as I stopped a few inches away from him and slowly licked my lips before glancing down at the growing bulge in his pants. "You're right," I admitted in a sultry voice that was laced with just the right tone of nervousness. I did like it, and I want it again. All of it. Just look at me, Bishop. Smell me." There it was. That look I'd seen countless times throughout my life. His pupils dilated as he stared at my heaving tits, drunk from the desperation in my voice and the faint scent still wafting from my hand. I glanced at V, who was shocked and horrified by my sudden change of heart. "I know you gotta have some laying around, and you know how much I like it, how hard I fuck on it. She'll like it too. She likes it rough, just like me." Bishop's eyes narrowed. "You playing at something here, sweetie? 'Cause it ain't gonna work. This is going to happen to both of you." I closed the remaining distance, opening my mouth into an O and resting my forehead against his chest. His heart was racing. "Good," I breathed in a whisper, not daring to look up at him. "I want this to happen to me. To us. I'm not lying to you. Please, Bishop, I'm already so fucking turned on. Please."
It's okay to be scared, Jude. Everyone is their first time. I'm just not sure I should be doing this, Cindy. My abuelos are right outside and we're gonna be eating any minute, and I don't want to do this. Come on, Jude. We've been playing your games all day. It'll only take a couple of minutes. Besides, you told me you like girls, so you can practice eating something else. I promise I won't laugh at you. Shit, it'll feel good, and I'll do the same thing to you. You're gonna fucking love it. Well, alright. Atta girl. Here, let me pull my pants down.
Bishop's silence was sharply contrasted by the jeers coming from behind me. "God damn, look at the fucking merc. She's all flushed. Don't be cruel, man. Give him a hit." He was almost there. I just needed to give him a little push to tip him over the edge. I stuck my tongue out and dragged it along the length of his shirt as I sank to my knees. I heard an agonizing whimper next to me, which I pushed to the back of my mind as my lips nearly grazed against the stain that was slowly spreading across his pants. "Please." That last touch was all it took. "I knew it," Bishop snorted. "See that, V? See how easy it was for me to break your little Judy? All it took was a few hours with me. Imagine how she'll be begging for it after a month. You're not gonna be any different." Bishop let out a long sigh. All right. Why not? Who's got the ice? Right here." I kept my eyes lidded, breathing against the thick outline in his jeans. I'd managed to score the excuse I would need to get close to V without raising suspicion. But what kind of distraction could I create that would draw their attention away from us for a few seconds? I could always shout, "What's that?" and point at the window, but that wouldn't carry any weight with them. A growing tension filled the air as a capsule was placed in Bishop's hand. The rattling sound that came from it sent a jolt of heat between my legs that I was powerless to fight against, just as I had been on the night they'd scrolled me. Scrolling. That was it. With a gulp, I sheepishly looked up at him. Are you gonna scroll us too? If so, can we get our first hits while you set everything up? This fucking anticipation is making me so wet, and I want my shorts drenched by the time you're all ready for us. I know about editing too. I could even... Oh, fuck. I'm so fucking hot right now, Bishop. I could even tune it up afterward, if you want. At some point during my performance, I'd stuck my hand down the front of my shorts and had started rubbing my fingers along my folds. I was throwing everything I had into this and didn't know what else I could do to sell it.
Such a needy little thing, aren't you? Bishop asked, idly fidgeting with the ice. V could never make you feel the way I did, isn't that right?
She can't, I nodded solemnly. I need your thick cock in me, in my mouth, my pussy, even my ass. I need you to fuck me the way she can't, to show her how.
I knew it.
Bishop looked toward his friends.
Well, you heard the bitch. Get the fucking gear set up.
That was it. I had what I needed, though my anxiety was growing with each passing second. Hopefully I could keep my hand steady when the time came.
Eyes up here, sweetie.
Thank you, I whispered, turning my eyes upward and holding out my hand.
Don't thank me yet. You two still got one hell of a debt to pay off. So here's the deal.
I'm gonna give you 1 tab. Bishop popped the capsule open and turned it over in his palm. He held out the thin flake like it was a piece of candy being offered to a child.
And you're gonna choose who gets it.
Now, I gotta say, it would be pretty selfish of you to not hand it over to your output, seeing as how she's probably a little dry still, and you're already leaking down your thighs. But I know you want it, and I gotta say, I'm nearly bursting out of my pants at the thought of V seeing how you really fuck. He dropped the flake into my hand. Just as I was about to turn toward V, he grabbed me by the jaw and squeezed my cheeks between his fingers.
But no matter who gets it, you're gonna get all of us lubed up first with those plump little lips of yours. Personally, if I was you, and I thank my lucky stars I'm not, I'd just pop the ice and be done with it.
You'll have a fucking blast getting us nice and wet for her, and it's not like we're not gonna have all sorts of fun together in the months ahead. But go ahead and choose, and keep it a surprise. I want to see how long it'll take before I can figure out who you picked. I'm gonna go make sure we're all set to record this little party of ours. Pushing my face away, Bishop turned and went to check on how things were progressing. But it was quiet. Too quiet. Only the occasional chuckle or bit of muttering broke the silence. This was my chance, but how was I going to tell her what we needed to do if I couldn't even risk a whisper? Realizing that I was running out of time, I rose and turned toward V, making sure to keep my head hung low and hands in front of me as though I were cradling the ice. V stared at me with eyes that were filled with pain and betrayal. She'd heard every word I'd said, seen every disgusting thing I'd done. But I could apologize later if we somehow made it out of here in one piece. V flinched away from me as I knelt next to her. I held up the flake of ice so she could see it, and then dropped it on the ground. Her brow furrowed, and I gave her a subtle nod.
That's right. We're not doing this.
Turning my head so that my port was out of view, I quickly ejected the chip and held it up for V to see. She studied it carefully, but still seemed confused. Her eyes returned to my own, yearning to understand.
Come on, V. Figure it out.
I widened my eyes and flashed them between V and the gun, tilting my head slightly to urge her where to look. Something toppled over behind me, prompting an outburst of shouting. We didn't have much time left. V finally looked toward where I was directing her attention to. I saw her eyes widen when she noticed the pistol. Her head snapped back to me. Hopefully, it would look like I was dropping the flake of ice onto her tongue as I brought the chip toward her port. For a terrifying instant, I fumbled with it, unable to get the damn thing inserted. But finally, it slid in with a dull click. Her eyes glowed with an orange hue as the software loaded. As soon as the light faded, she returned her attention to me. Her nod was barely perceptible, but it was enough for me to tense and get ready to run as V did the same. I cupped her cheek in my hand and said with my eyes what I knew could very well be my final words to her.
I trust you.
Together, we leapt to our feet and took off in opposite directions, me sprinting to my right while V made a break for the gun. I heard shouting and footsteps racing after me as I sprinted as fast as I could. Even though V was faster, I still ran like a bat out of hell, focused on putting as much distance between us as possible. A gunshot cracked through the air, followed closely by another. Fuck! I wanted to turn around so badly and see if she was okay. I didn't know how many of them were chasing me, but hopefully I'd managed to draw most of them away. I kept running, aware that the footsteps were catching up to me. I'd nearly made it halfway across the building before a hand grabbed my shirt, causing me to lurch backward and fall to the ground. As I flailed about and tried to push the hands away from me, I craned my neck to see what was happening to V. There were bodies on the ground, 3 of them, though one was staggering back to his feet and clutching his neck. I caught sight of a muzzle flash from behind a crate, followed by a loud bang that caused my ears to ring. More shots rang out. I tried to watch what was happening, but a muscled arm suddenly wrapped under my chin, constricting my windpipe like a vice. My eyes bulged as I tried to draw breath that wasn't there. Just as my head turned fuzzy and my vision began to blur, I was yanked to my feet. I couldn't stand on my own, though the man's grip around my throat loosened just enough for oxygen to flood into my lungs. "One more fucking shot and I'll snap her fucking neck," Bishop's voice boomed throughout the warehouse. I caught the worst of it by having him shout right next to my ear. I was still gasping for breath, but could see 4 of them taking cover behind a stack of crates, their guns pointed at the pair of forklifts against the wall. Something pink darted between them, which caused my heart to flutter with excitement. She was still alive, and she'd managed to drop 3, no, only 2 of them. The other was back on his feet, though he wore a vacant expression as he staggered aimlessly about. But V was still outgunned 4-1, and I was Bishop's hostage. "Toss the iron, now. 3, 2...
Don't do it, V. The second you get rid of it, we're as good as dead."
But just as he'd done before, Bishop was turning V's love for me against herself, wielding me as a weapon. A flurry of emotions, anger, hopelessness, dread, even love, rushed through me as a gun was sent gliding across the floor toward the armed men. We'd fought as hard as we could. There had just been too many of them. V walked out from behind the forklifts with her hands in the air. "Let her go!" Bishop laughed. "You hear that, sweetie?" Bishop said, his voice loud enough to carry across the room. "Your output says I should let you go. You know what I think? I think I'm gonna take my sweet fucking time with you both. Gonna bend you both over one of those fucking crates and chain you together so you can see each other getting railed every fucking day till I grow bored with you and fry your goddamn brains." A massive blast that shook me to the core boomed across the walls. There was a scream. Bishop lost his grip, allowing me to stumble forward and spin around to see what happened. He had collapsed to the ground and was shouting in pain as a heavy stream of blood flowed from a gaping hole in his leg. Something in the distance caught my eye. A shape, obscured by the shadows, slowly emerged, revealing itself to be a man in a heavy sheepskin coat. In his hand, he held a powerful revolver that was aimed squarely at the others. "River Ward, I'm here on behalf of the NCPD. Put your fucking hands in the air where I can see 'em." The other ring members were stunned, watching as Bishop flailed about in agony. One of them raised his hands in the air and tossed his gun aside. His friends quickly followed suit. River came to a stop next to me, his eyes darting between Bishop and the others. "You okay, Judy?" Yeah, I managed to say. I thought you weren't gonna show." "I'd still be out there looking if I hadn't heard the gunfire. The badges will be here any— Hey, V, stop!" It only took a second for V to lunge forward and snatch one of the guns off the ground. She aimed it squarely at Bishop, who was still cursing under his breath. I was shocked when River shifted his aim, focusing his sight on V. "Put it down, V." But V didn't seem to be hearing him and kept marching toward us. She was still wearing only her bra and panties, but that cold glare had returned to her eyes. "I said drop it," River shouted. "You can't do this." I snapped out of it, suddenly realizing V was in far more danger than she realized. There was an intensity in River's eyes that made me worried. Only a man with the highest ethical standards would give a shit if a rapist got plugged by someone not wearing a badge. River seemed to fit that mold, which means he would do what he felt was necessary to uphold the law, even if it wasn't his responsibility any longer. "You fucking shot me, you motherfucker," Bishop hissed at River. "My fucking leg!" V pistol whipped him across the face, sending spittle and a few drops of blood splattering across the floor. "V, fuck that!" V screamed at River. "You don't know what he did, what he tried to do. I'm gonna kill this shit stain right fucking now." I needed to find my voice before it was too late. V's face was burning with rage as she pointed the barrel of her gun at Bishop. Despite having lost a tooth, not to mention the hole in his leg which was still leaking blood, he managed a crooked grin. "You don't know the half of what— ouch, shit! The half of what I did. I branded her for the rest of her ugly fucking life. Every time you— shut the fuck up," River hollered. "V, put it down. I can't look away on something like this. Just let the badges get here and clean this shit up." But V wasn't having it. Her body was shaking, teeth chattering. She grimaced and tightened her grip on the trigger. All it would take was just a little more pressure and she'd be up for murder charges. Her life, our lives, would be over. I couldn't let that happen after everything we'd been through. Hoping she wouldn't pull the trigger at the same time I moved, I stepped between her and Bishop. "Judy, move." "No." V tried to sidestep me, but I mirrored her movements until she growled and lowered the pistol. I allowed myself a small sigh of relief, but still kept a close eye on her as she began to pace back and forth, searching for an opening. She was fast when she needed to be. "Let me kill him, Jude. You know he fucking deserves it for everything he did to you, that he tried to do to us." "Why did you call River earlier?" I asked. "What? When you first got here, you could have gone in guns blazing. Why didn't you?" I don't know," V stammered. "Bullshit. You called him because you changed your mind and you weren't gonna go through with it. That was the right thing to do, and it still is. Not this." V shook her head and was about to speak when I raised my hand. "Stop." I screamed that word so many fucking times that night, and they never listened to me. I said stop. I said no, and they did it to me anyway. I need you to listen to me now. I love you, V. I trust you, and I'm asking you now to stop. This is my choice. I know you're not like them. Please don't take my choice away from me." V tried to choke back a sob, but failed as heavy, wet tears fell from her eyes. Seeing that her hold on the gun was slipping, I reached out and carefully removed it from her grip. I handed it to River, who quickly took it and, after sliding the safety on, slid it into his holster. "Judy, I love you too." I threw my arms around V, nearly sending us both crashing to the floor as my own tears spilled down my cheeks. We held each other like that, both shaking as our hearts beat against one another. It was over. Years of secrets and mistrust that we had both had a part in sowing had finally come to an end. We were finally free to love and trust one another without reservation. The sound of footsteps racing into the marina caused us to part. The badges were storming the building like something out of one of those old movies V liked to watch. River lowered his weapon and announced himself to the lead officer as the rest dispersed throughout the building and began cuffing the surviving members of the Death Head Ring. A gratuitous moan of relief drew my attention away. A pair of badges were treating Bishop's wound. One of them had just jabbed him with a max stock. "You fucking bitch," he laughed, his cruel eyes gleefully staring into my own. "You played me that whole fucking time, didn't you, you little monster?" "Holy shit." Just remember how good you felt when I was inside of you. You fucking loved every minute of it, and no matter how hard you try, you're never gonna forget. V tensed as he spoke, but remained by my side. The badges hauled him up and were about to lift him onto a stretcher that had been rolled in when I spoke up. Wait. I squeezed V's hand and walked over to him, stopping inches from his face. Gonna give me a sloppy kiss goodbye, sweetie? You're only alive because of me. What was it you called me just now? A monster? Did I? Bishop pondered. Should have called you a slut instead. He must have expected me to slap him across the face, since he recoiled almost immediately. I ignored his remark and held his gaze. I used to think that I was a monster. Spent most of my fucking life lying to myself about that, covering my skin with ink and drowning myself in booze or whatever else I could get my hands on to forget what I was and what I'd done to myself. But that's something I never should have done because I'm fucking beautiful. You think your brand, as you call it, is something I'm ashamed of now? I will proudly wear that fucking brand for the rest of my life because I own it, not you. This is my choice, and I refuse to give you that fucking power anymore. I refuse to sink. As for you, I actually fucking pity you, the miserable piece of shit that you are. Goodbye, sweetie. I didn't really hear what he said as I turned around and walked back to V. He was right about one thing. I would never forget him. But I knew with certainty that I would never dwell on him either. Looking forward, I would be all about that from now on. One of the badges had draped a blanket over her shoulders. She was still trembling a little, but seemed to have calmed down. You okay? V asked. I nodded. I am. I will be. You? V started to nod, but her lip quivered for a moment, though she quickly stifled it. It was a day. I'll put it that way. A lot to unpack, and we can talk about it later. But I'll be okay, like you. I ran a hand through V's hair, trying to comb through some of the tangled mess it had become. My own probably didn't look any better. I smiled. We were as dirty as shit scraped off the bottom of a boot, but we were still the cotton candy couple. River soon approached us along with one of the badges who wore a few additional bars on her lapel than the others. Hey, River said with a curt nod. This is Sergeant Myers of the 4th Precinct. Sergeant, this is Judy and V. The badge gave a small smile, but didn't attempt to offer either of us her hand. Instead, she rested her hands on her hips and surveyed the scene in a cool and methodical manner. Gonna take a few hours to get details sorted out. Statements, all that jazz. We'll also get you checked out. Clean bill of health, all that. River smiled. Monica here has gotten my ass out of more than just a few scrapes. You can tell her everything that happened. I'll vouch for her being one of the few good ones. She'll do what's supposed to be done with it. Thanks, River, V said, wrapping an arm over his shoulder to pull him into a hug. I was proud of her for that. Even after everything that had happened, she didn't seem to be retreating away from contact. And then it hit me. My holo. Shit, and her holo. And my van, and V's bike, and... I shook my head. That kind of bullshit always seemed important until it wasn't. We'd find our way home and figure things out together. I'll be back soon with questions, Sergeant Myers declared. I nodded as V and River pulled away from each other. They exchanged a few pleasantries before River said his farewells, making sure to add that he hoped to talk to me one day when I wasn't at the center of a crisis. And there we were, standing side by side. V looked at me and saw the way my arms were crossed. She extended an arm, inviting me to find warmth under the blanket with her. Smiling, I stepped closer and wrapped an arm around her waist as V snuggled me close. Can I ask you something, Judy? Sure, I said, quirking an eyebrow. Do you have any idea how we did that back there? Knowing exactly what each of us was gonna do and when. I've been playing it over and over again in my mind, and I'm still not sure how we did that. I smiled. Of course I know how we did it. We did it together, V.